Good morning, community action. Oh my goodness. Good morning, community action. Helping people. Helping people. And helping people. Darn right. Good morning. Happy Community Action Solstice, where we start our day with an 8 a.m. workshop and we wrap up with our gala presentation at 9 o'clock. It's the longest day of the year. It's all good. Wow, you look great today. Not that you didn't look great yesterday. You look great today. I hope yesterday was an okay day. All right. Rashad Robinson, thumbs up. Excellent. We're going to start off, I know we ran a little bit short yesterday. We do have a video from the Deputy Secretary at HUD, Adrienne Todman, that we wanted to play her welcome to the audience here this morning. Go ahead and play the video.
Hello there. Though I can't join you in person for this year's convention, I wanted to quickly say thank you to the Community Action Partnership and all of you there representing community action agencies. Thank you for your continued work to improve communities and make America a better place to live and to work. The Biden-Harris administration is committed to leading a recovery from the COVID pandemic that is equitable by advancing community development, expanding opportunity, and driving down costs for all who call this nation home, especially those in our most vulnerable communities. For example, the administration is working to expand housing supply and address unsheltered homelessness. But we know that equitable economic development entails building homes and forging more resilient communities that help people thrive. This requires all of us to think about the collective challenges that communities and neighborhoods across America are facing and what they need to become stronger. It also requires us to think creatively and accept that sometimes one-size-fits-all approach simply doesn't work, especially for those communities who have historically been left behind and as a result are facing some of the hardest challenges to solve. And finally, it requires on-the-ground expertise. The President, Secretary Fudge, and I are firm believers that people who know their communities best deserve to be at the table when decisions are being made and dollars are being allocated. The role you play is essential to HUD's ability to achieve our mission, a mission we are honored to share with dedicated and creative service providers like yourself. We look forward to the continued partnership. Thank you.
And please know we're going to take them up on their offer to come in and visit with our colleagues at HUD. So thank you for that. We appreciate that. Also, we want to make sure that we give a bit of a spotlight to another one of our gold level sponsors. Many of you have been involved in the conversations where we talk about the social determinants of health and the role that community action has played in that for decades. We are thrilled that the medical community is understanding that you need to be fed, you need to be warm, you need to be cool in the summer, you need to have a safe home, you need to have a safe community in order to thrive. And United Healthcare has partnered with us here at the partnership for a couple of years. They have also worked very distinctly, I know, in Arkansas and various other places. So I'm gonna invite Sheila Waits from United Healthcare to join us at the stage for a few minutes. Thank you for joining us, Sheila.
Good morning, Community Action. We're happy to be here. My name's Sheila Waits, and I'm with United Healthcare. Years ago, Terry Bearden and I started a dream for us to partner healthcare with community action partners, and for 2 years now, we're happy to be here. So can't wait to see what all this is going to do. Next slide, please. As you can see in the map in front of you, we have plans across the United States that serve the underserved. We are part of government programs at United Healthcare, and United Healthcare serves those who have Medicare and Medicaid. We also have a division of folks that serve just the population under 65 who have Medicaid. So we have dual plans that offer extra benefits, things like glasses, free dental, transportation to and from the doctor. And this past year, we added a food benefit. Many states offer $200 a month where they can go purchase food at their local grocery store. Some states have lower benefits, but that will be increasing for 2023. There are over 12 million individuals that are duly eligible across the nation, so we're looking forward to serving that population. Next slide. This is the food benefits. So each individual that enrolls in United Healthcare will receive a card that they can take to their local grocery store. Right in my state, we have $125 a month that we offer. They can buy healthy foods such as meat, vegetables, and in some states it ranges up to $200. They also get over-the-counter benefits, things like aspirin, cough medicine, vitamins, incontinence supplies, things that are very expensive that a Medicare beneficiary needs or somebody who's low income can now purchase free with their health plan. So it's very important. Next. This is an example of how we can partner with you. Those of you that have come by the booth, we've asked you to give us your name, the state that you're affiliated with. We have people across the nation who would be glad to come into your local community action agencies. We will donate money to help with programs that you have. We will host events. As you can see, this is a food commodity with the tents outside. We did this during the pandemic. We provided personal protective equipment. We had community health fairs. We do health education. We plan parties. We feel like if we partner with you, they trust you at your local agencies. We provide a gap in what you do, and it's a healthcare need, which is very important. So we come in, we educate, but we do it through your senior centers, through your volunteers. We also help deliver food to those that are shut in that you need extra help to get that food to them. So these are examples of some of the things we can do. Next. So I have a great team today. Of course, I'm from Arkansas. We started this, but the team from New York, I'm gonna have them stand up. Today we have with us Liz Word, who is the Community Outreach Arkansas rep. She's here. We have Dennis, who was here yesterday. If you met him, he's gone. He's at another event today. We have Radhika, who's the Associate Director of Sales for New York City. We have Priscilla, who's here. She's one of our community outreach managers for New York City and Long Island. And then we also have Diana, and Diana is the community outreach person of New Jersey. Next year, we'll be in Atlanta. You'll get to meet more of our team, but reach out to your local United Healthcare person. If you don't know who that is, we'll be happy to provide you with that information. We feel that healthcare is so important in providing those low-income individuals a better life through dental, vision, going and getting their vaccinations. So thank you for allowing us to be here, and thank you for your partnership.
Thank you, Sheila. All right, well, thank you for coming to this morning's opening plenary. We're gonna have a conversation with folks who understand the human services sector really from soup to nuts. We got Early Head Start, which is in the womb. And we have the National Council on Aging, where we all hope to be able to need the services from the National Council on Aging perhaps someday. And we have economic development. We have community action, we have CSBG, we got public human services as well as nonprofit human services. So we're gonna have a rich conversation here this morning. As part of the foundation, in your bag is this is your first distribution of this report. Is Lana Shope in the room? If you've heard of Lana's list from Sharice Johnson earlier this week about CSBG care spending, Lana has led our response to COVID through our CARES dollars through OCS. And working in partnership with OCS has produced, this is the fourth report that program has produced to talk about the impact of COVID. And while we understand that the CSBG annual report is a critical document, we also know that doesn't happen in real time, does it? So we hope that you see this report. Andy Pavey on our team may also be in the room. He is the one who designed this report. I see him in the back. Both of them are waving. Can we give them a little bit of love, a little Lana and a little Andy love? 135 individual community action agencies out of 1,000, which we couldn't get 1,000, the book would be a bit bigger. There is an executive summary as well that you can use. We'll also be working with the state associations and local agencies around media outreach, press releases, plug and play. Some of you don't need that support, but a lot of agencies don't have a comms department. So we want you to use this report. Now, I know there are a number of small states, and you're like, we still got money to spend, Denise. We got a whole nother year. We will continue those efforts. We are challenged that we don't have CARES TNTA money going forward, but we wanted to make sure we produced a final report that you could be proud of, that will stand the test of time and history, and will show the story of what Community Action has done during these past 30 months. And today's panel, again, is so experienced and so supportive of our network. We are joined, Gary Cunningham has been with us for many years at our National Partner Panel and has spoken from the main stage from Prosperity Now, President and CEO of Prosperity Now. I hope many of you are traveling to Atlanta in a week or two for his conference that they do every 2 years. It's an amazing event. Can't wait to be there. Allison Malouf, apparently from Caplaw, I think, this week? Oh, just kidding. All right. Allison Malouf is the executive director of our sister organization, Caplaw. Y'all know Caplaw. Jeannie Chaffin keeps sitting in different seats, but today she's sitting in the seat of interim executive director of NASCAS, working with our state partners in CSBG and weatherization state offices. Tracy Waring-Evans is our partner on the Public Human Services side. She's the president and CEO of the American Public Human Services Association. We've been building a close relationship with APHSA. Hopefully you've seen some of our toolkits that we've been able to put out together, attend some of the workshops. Was just with her in Savannah just a couple of weeks ago, talking to heads of TANF departments and SNAP offices and the public human services side of the equation. Tommy Sheridan, I think probably most everybody in this room knows Tommy. Works with the National Head Start Association. Tommy, we so appreciate you coming up. You're always a great partner. Head Start is so important to this network and to the families we serve. And I'm sorry, Josh, I have to look up your last name. I'm sorry, my apologies. Josh Hodges, thank you, yes. National Council on Aging. We understand that many of you, we intersect, right? Meals on Wheels, Councils on Aging, we have CAPS who are AAAs, right? And we know the aging of America is a real and deep concern as we go forward here in our country. So Josh, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate the partnership of yourself and Ramsey, the president and CEO of NCOA, and we look forward to continuing partnership. So I'm gonna stop talking, and I'm gonna ask us I'm gonna go around the rainbow is what they called this, the rainbow shape of the chairs. And I'm sorry for folks over here, you won't be able to see everything, but we are gonna be up on the screen, so my apologies for that. This is immovable this week, so. Gary, maybe you want to start us off. What are some of the key things you want this room to know about Prosperity Now or this moment in time? What are some of those initial thoughts that you'd want to let this wonderful gathering of folks know from your perspective?
Well, thank you, Denise, and thank you again for having me here. I am so delighted to be here. Good morning. No, I know you all can do better than that. Good morning. Wake up. This is your life. So my name is Gary Cunningham, as Denise said. I'm with Prosperity Now. And I think I'm going to get over here and stand up because I want these people to see me over here. How y'all doing over there? So I'm with an organization that has been around 40 years, not as long as CAP, but around quite a while, working on how do we address issues of economic mobility, how do we address issues of every family in America having what they need to excel and accelerate. So I actually do the same work that all of you do. Isn't that what you do? Yeah, we do the same thing. And so what we actually work on, we're what we call a think tank. We have a policy, research. We're on the Hill, we're in DC, and so we're on the Hill a lot, but we're also around the country. And so we do that part, working on all kind of issues from children's tax credits to earned income tax credits to how do we get home ownership and affordable housing for all Americans. And then on top of that, we're in communities. We actually work in communities with many of you throughout this country to actually focus on how do we build the infrastructure and the strength of community-based organizations so that they can actually serve people better. We do a lot more, but I don't want to be up here all day. So I'll just say to you, it is my honor and privilege to work with all of you. I am you. I was someone that took advantage of your program as a young person. I was somebody that was homeless and was left out and locked out of the system. And I have to say, your work made a difference for me. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary.
I think that Gary started a trend, so I am a follower of trends. So I will also stand. I think it's probably a good idea. I don't know if we have to stand the whole time, Gary, but maybe we'll stand this first go around. So anyway, I'm Allison Malouf, as Denise said, and I am with Cap Law, and I think hopefully a lot of you guys know of Cap Law. We are the legal arm of Community Action. We are a sister organization with the National Community Action Partnership and the National Association of Community Service Programs, State Community Service Programs, NASCASP. So I'm very happy to be here with you all today. Also, really welcome continued partnership with you guys as we move forward in these next couple of years. We really see ourselves at Cap Law as a thought partner with you guys. I know we're about compliance, I know we're about the laws and the regulations, but we also are about helping you guys think strategically, compliantly as you move forward in these upcoming years. And as with every good year, there's always going to be challenges, and we are up to the task to help you with those challenges. So always feel free to reach out to Cap Law with those struggles, those challenges, those issues as proactively as you possibly can, because then we can be more effective in the way that we address those challenges. So really happy to be here, and looking forward to today's conversation.
Good morning, sweet community action people. It's great to be here with you today. And I was up at 8 doing a session, Gary, so I'm awake. And it was jam-packed, so I'm energized. We had standing room only in that session. I'm Jeannie Chaffin, and I'm the interim executive director for the National Association for State Community Service Programs. That's a mouthful. But who that really is that is your state weatherization assistance program officials and your state CSBG officials. So we are a sister organization to Cap Law and the National Community Action Partnership. And they're in a search for the next executive director, and while they're doing that, I've agreed to kind of serve, and it's been easy. The NASCASP staff are beautiful, and I actually see some of them there in the middle. Raise your hands so folks can see where the NASCASP staff is at. And I also see that Beverly Buchanan, our board president, is here, and she is from Arkansas, and she's there at that table too, I believe, if my eyesight isn't so bad. Okay. So NASCASP has been busy working with state officials on the CSBG side of the house to really make sure that the $1 billion in CARES Act funding that came to CSBG is utilized fully, and in partnership with Cap Law and NCAP, we've done a lot of webinars and tried to just support every level of the Community Action Network family and doing the very best at delivering very important services to folks right now. And Denise, you preempted me, but I actually brought my pandemic report up here because I wanted to be sure and call it out. If you haven't taken a moment to read this, read it on the way home or when you get back. The first time I went through and read this, I literally cried, because it comes through what you all have been doing over the last 30 months, the pivots and the commitment. And while you're dealing with your own family issues during the pandemic, you all moved mountains in community action agencies, and it's so impressive. On the weatherization side of the house, there's a lot going on in weatherization. $3 billion in the bipartisan infrastructure law that's going to start flowing out. And I guess one of the things I would want to say, and I'm sure I'll have another opportunity, is that you know, weatherization officials are really committed and interested and want to work with local grantees to make sure that that is a success. And as DOE said yesterday, we have experience to call on, and we're in a different position than we were when ARA came about, so that's really good. We're really pleased to be here. We want to be alongside you, and NASCAS is there to help states be alongside local community action agencies, and looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and I'm going to disrupt, right, what just happened, and I am not going to stand up. I'm hoping folks can see me over there, really in part because I think a lot of us on the stage are actually disruptors, right? Really wanting to think about what we need to do long term. So I am Tracy Waring-Evans with the American Public Human Services Association, and I'll share two things because I'm excited to get into the deeper conversation with folks. But you know, the American Public Human Services Association has been around for 92 years, and our work, while our origin is not the same as community action, we constantly find ourselves striving for the same, looking really to empower communities, to unlock the structural barriers that we, often public sector, have put in place. And there isn't a network out there that is closer to community and is enabled, as that report reflects, to really make the kind of shifts we need to make and to have the kind of impact we want to have with communities. And so our work, while we work within public sector, really is at the intersection of social services, community-based organization, people working in proximate with people with lived experience and expertise to truly allow families and communities to thrive. And the other thing I guess I'll lift up is, as Denise mentioned, we were able to work during the pandemic to lift up stories about how community action and public sector agencies, some of community action agencies that are public sector themselves, were working together to be so responsive to what people were experiencing, and to develop a bit of a playbook for what happened in real time, but also where we want to go. And so I encourage folks to also take a look at that, that set of tools, and there's actually a session later today to take a little bit deeper dive into what we learned. And I guess the final thing I'll share kind of in opening is I hope that as we're having a conversation here today, we can really talk about the forces that are at play right now, macro and micro, across our systems, how people are experiencing what they're experiencing, you know, whether that's inflation or workforce issues, and talk about how together we can really strengthen and bring solutions to the table. I think so often we are focused on moving ahead, but not necessarily pulling in the larger landscape and trying to get underneath what that means for people, and I hope we can explore that a little bit more today.
Great. Well, I'm going to disrupt again and stand up because this time it's these folks over here that can't see. I was realizing. So I see you over there hiding in the corner as well. But good morning, everyone. It is great to be here. Great to be with such a distinguished panel. And I really love when we have these types of conversations because we really are talking holistically, right? We really are practicing what we preach, which is to be looking at the social determinants of health, the broader impacts of poverty, and the ways to disrupt the systems that really reinforce poverty in a lot of ways. So as I said, I'm Tommy with National Head Start. Super great to be here. I think while our organizations may not be quite sister organizations, our programs certainly are sibling organizations coming about from the same time. 57 years ago, if I remember how to do math, something like that. So really just want to touch on, I think, three main quick little bits of updates, just to make sure everybody is aware. I know we had a great discussion at the Head Start Town Hall yesterday, and then just one ask of everyone as well, and I will try to keep it under about a minute and a half. So pardon me for talking fast, but welcome to New York City. So first of all, I think for all the Head Start folks, biggest question I always hear is, what about that mask vaccine rule? And short answer is, I don't have any updates on that. Long answer is, now's the time to be telling our story. We got to be talking about this. This has been incredibly challenging for Head Start programs. This has been incredibly challenging for families, and it's getting in the way of us doing our jobs. And what I mean by that is the fact that we don't have a final rule. We are still working on the interim final rule. We understand the administration is still pushing or still working through a final rule, but the more we can be talking about this, the more we can be sharing what the impact has been, what the impact might be, and why we just need some degree of finality. Whatever that final decision is, we'll figure out a way to do it, because we're Head Start and that's what we do. But we just need to have some sort of final piece there. So strongly encourage and recommend folks talking. If you have any questions about how to do that or want more, feel free to reach out to any of us. Number two is on cost of living adjustment. We are coming up, I think David Bradley was here yesterday, shared a bit on how close we're getting in the fiscal year 2023 conversations. I will just say we are in a good place. Maybe not a great place, but a good place in Head Start and early Head Start for trying to get a good cost of living adjustment. As of now, the House and the Senate both have proposals that used NHSA's number, which was what inflation was in January. Well, it's now September? August. It's still August. Is it September? Whatever month it is. We're 6-7 months past that. I can't even keep track anymore, right? I was like, wait, is that the 31st today or the 1st? When was my train right? But y'all know what I mean. We're fast forward, here we are, and inflation is even higher than what it was back then. I think the number that we had first put into that bill was about 5.5%. We are now, obviously, inflation is higher than that, and we are going to continue to push as this deal kind of gets finalized in that space. That also means, for those of you not in Head Start, we need to start thinking creatively about how to get additional dollars in to be able to give cost of living adjustments to all of our community action staff in particular. So a lot more to come there. That is another piece that we're continuing to work for. And then let's see, I got those two. And then the last thing I'll just say, and really with a shout out to the folks that were, I don't know if anybody was in the panel that was right before this session, but I was able to walk in towards the end of it. And that is exactly what we need to be doing as a broad social services community. It's telling our successes, putting the face to the work that we do. And I really want to acknowledge and thank the folks that were on the panel. I don't know if they're in this room or not, but those were, I walked in and was immediately getting goosebumps, just hearing about the incredible power of community action, the incredible power of Head Start, the incredible power of the work you all do. And folks don't hear it enough. We got to be talking about this more and more, because we do such a good job. We have such a big impact. And oftentimes we aren't able to break through the noise. But if every single one of us commits to sharing those stories and talking more about that and lifting those things up, I think we're not only going to be able to continue to do the work we're going to be able to do, but maybe even move some other big mountains along the way too. Excited for our conversation.
Good morning. I feel like I have to disrupt somehow. I don't know, should I be doing like a half-sit position? I'm not quite sure what the rule is at this point, but it's all about, being this. So thank you very much for inviting the National Council on Aging in here. I think it is always exciting when national organizations have an opportunity to actually talk to people who do something real for a living. And I often say to my staff, we move paper from one side of the desk to another side of the desk so real people in the real world can do real work. So on behalf of the aging community writ large, thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for the connections you're making. Thank you for the lives you're touching. Like Tommy said, I was able to catch the last few minutes of the panel before us, and just hearing the stories, hearing the impact. We often talk in macro numbers at the national level. I can tell you that 70 million people will be over the age of 65 in the year 2030. So that's 1 in 5 of the national population. 40% of those are economically insecure. Another 40% on top of that are one away from falling into that economic insecurity. One fall away, one long-term care stay away. Many people in here don't know, many people in here know, many people out there don't know that long-term care costs an average of $100,000 a year. So even if you enter older adult space with assets, that spin down is incredibly challenging for most people. And so at NCOA, we have a sole focus on believing that aging well is a human right, that you have the right to age well. This is new, this is novel. For the longest time, people saw the civil rights movement ending at 65. They saw these things ending. Until that point, you had all of the things that made you, all of your lived experiences, all of who you were. But at 65, you were just an older person. You were an elder, you were a senior, you were seen as them. It is finally time for us to see older adults as who they are. It is a human right to age well, and that's what we stand for. That's why we're excited to be here. Really excited to talk to y'all about partnerships at the local level, because that's where the work really happens. I know many of y'all work with your area agencies on aging. I also represent a lot of the senior centers around the country. I strongly encourage those connections. We can talk more about that. Really excited to be here. Really excited to be on the panel. Thank you for inviting me.
So we're going to spend the next 6 hours reviewing, because we could, right? This panel has enough expertise to take us well into next week, and the range of topics represents what all of you deal with every day at the local level. You're doing soup to nuts, prenatal to the grave. And what can we do at the national level to reflect and integrate, and that whole family approach that we talk about, I hope that you see we're trying to live and lean into that here today. So this is just thank you all for being here and traveling to New York City for this conversation. So let's jump in. 30 months, we talked about the report. You've all been involved in a range of human service work for so many years. These past 30 months have been a unique moment in time. What have you seen that has been, we talked the challenges, let's talk about the innovations, the success, both from the micro level, from individual agency performance, but have there been also wins at the systemic level, at the systems level, whether in federal government, state level, local government, systems, local communities? Gary, what have you seen over the last 30 months from the human services sector that has amazed you?
So one of the things I've seen as we were going into the pandemic, almost 3 years ago now, what I saw was resilience. We did projects across the country, both with the human service sector and those folks that help people prepare their low-income people prepare their taxes. And we saw people stepping up to the plate and shifting what they were doing in order to serve their clients, to serve the people that they actually are entrusted with in different ways. We helped convert folks to digital, which was a huge change for many communities that had, we were so used to face-to-face, one-on-one, helping that family or helping that individual, et cetera, and we had to shift quickly. And so I seen that happen. I was just amazed about the resilience. In people that actually were struggling themselves in their home life and in their work life, actually reached out and helped other people, even though they had some struggles themselves. I know all of us in this room, in one way or another, has been touched deeply by the pandemic that's happened over the last few years. But we also seen some transformation at the federal level with the Paycheck protection program that originally got off to a kind of a rocky start, in part because it was developed as a universal program that wasn't targeted for the communities that it was meant to serve. And so we worked with a whole coalition of folks to actually see some shifts in that, and other federal government programs to make sure that folks that are on the ground that are doing this work actually get the support and the help they need. And then, I could go on with this, but finally, let me just say that one of the biggest shifts that I've seen in this work across is this multi-generational work that folks are doing, this 2-gen, this 3-gen work. Because if we're just working with the current circumstances of what people are facing, we're not looking towards the future. I'm one that actually believes that our future is better than the past that we've left behind. Even with all of what's going on right now, I believe that this country can rise to the occasion. We have done it before. We have built one of the greatest countries on the planet. When we did the New Deal, when we intervened to change some of the laws with the civil rights movement in this country, we have been this country that is resilient and actually can move forward. I believe at this inflection point is what they call a punctuated equilibrium, meaning a punctuation of what we knew. That's now not there anymore. And so the opportunity to have a society that works equally well for everyone, where people of color, where people that are left out, shut out, haven't been part of this system, can be a true part of this system is what we're working on every day. So I actually believe in the work that all of you are doing. You are the front lines of this work, and the generational work that you're doing to transform families, to transform individuals is where I think the future lies. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. Allison and Jeannie, you have the community action focus probably on the panel here. What have you seen from both local agency, statewide, nationally? What's your perspective on what has changed? What has been some of those moments here?
Yeah, I just want to add to, what Gary said was absolutely correct. I think the flexibility, the nimbleness with which community action reacted, and really there was a lot coming at us really, really quickly, and especially in the beginning stages, and the way in which the agencies were reaching out to us, to each other, to try to shift and change and sort of embody that resilience that Gary spoke about was phenomenal. The food programs, the just emergency need programs. I got to say, this pandemic was an equalizer. It didn't care how much money you had. If you were sick, you were sick, and if you were potentially on the verge of needing serious medical care, that happened to everyone. And I think community action knew that would impact our communities so greatly that you guys stepped up and tried to help as much as you could, purchasing PPE wherever you could. I don't know how you did it, but you found it, and you protected not only your staff, but our people. And I think the nimbleness with which you did that was so incredible, and is why money just kept coming at us, which is a good thing and a hard thing as well. And I think we've all been working through that piece of it. I also just want to focus on, and then I'll kind of pass it off to Jeannie, because I think she'll speak to this. I think there was really some inroads with respect to the collaboration at the different levels, the local level and the state level, and with the federal level. I think the federal level, we had a lot of turnover during that time, and they really were forced to get up to speed quite quickly. And I think when they got there, they fully engaged. I think the states, there was a little less turnover at that point, and they were really engaging, many states, with local agencies. This became a true group effort to make sure that our communities that were so heavily impacted were being served. And I just hope that moving forward, we can continue those kinds of collaborations where we're really listening to each other and really trying to make game day decisions and choices and risks. We took a lot of risks during this time, and they were calculated as much as you can take calculated risks. And, we're going to all be in it together as we keep moving forward with respect to all of that. So,
yeah, I think that just pick up on a couple of things. I think Allison hit a lot of the points that are really important. I think the collaboration between states and community action agencies, in the best cases, really accelerated eligibility, accelerated adopting new practices. I think definitely necessity was the mother of invention, right? We had to do things differently. We turned things around and made changes in systems around eligibility and other things that would have taken us months, if not years, to do under normal conditions. But I think that's another theme of the pandemic, right? It's accelerated the workforce changes. Is it accelerated racial equity conversation? There's just a lot of things that have changed, and And we're not even sure what that all looks like moving forward. But I think one of the things that you hear everywhere you go is, how do we maintain some of those gains and not go backwards? So if we allowed some flexibilities, if we adopted categorical eligibility, for example, in a system, let's not go back. Let's continue to figure out how we streamline the work that we're doing with families so that we can go deeper and have more impact and not spend as much time, on things that are more administrative and may not help us in the end. So I think accelerating, making some gains, streamlining, we definitely, states and community action agencies work together and with the federal folks in many cases to make those gains. So I think that's stuff that we should all be proud of and to sort of think about how do we take it even to the next level at this point.
Thanks, Jeannie. You saw the pandemic and the network at different stages, being in the field and then moving into the NASCAS role as well and working more closely with the states. We appreciate your perspective. Tracy, I remember before the pandemic, we were talking a lot about the human services ecosystem. I think the last time you were on one of our main stages at our conference was talking about the human services ecosystem report that you and some of your colleagues had put out. And we also talked during the pandemic. I know early on, I remember, we're making changes now, and this human services system can't look like this 3 years from now, and here we are almost 3 years later. What have you seen from a human services ecosystem? Because you have your view across the entirety of the human services system.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question, Denise, and I think it builds on what we've heard so far. If you ask what has changed that's likely to not be you ring a bell and you can't undo it. Well, I think the thing that is fundamental and that we haven't seen the full impact of is that we actually saw what was possible. We actually saw, we can talk about collaboration, we can talk about the strength of partnership, we can talk about being human-centered and really putting people first. We can talk about how intentional we need to be about getting resources to communities that have been marginalized for so long. And we saw, and there's evidence of it in your report, all across the nation. Now, that doesn't mean it didn't come with a lot of challenges. It doesn't mean that we have a lot of other things that we need to really be intentional about. But I think as a collective community, we can't let the momentum of what we saw to be possible in really accelerated periods of time to let go of that, right? So as we unwind a public health emergency, there's a whole bunch of questions out there as to what that's going to mean for families and communities. And I think we have to go into it with the same spirit of response that we saw across the nation. And I'll go micro for a second and just give a specific example that I know came through, I think the work we did with your team, Denise, to look at some of the things that were happening across the country that were innovations in Oregon, in the Department of Human Services there. They were able to allow participants that were in the SNAP employment and training program, which was being led by a community consortium, to purchase laptops for the first time for folks who were part of the program. This is a nutrition and employment program, right? And so here we are, early days of the pandemic, and folks need access to the equipment and reimbursement for cell phone and internet services, and that had never been part of the dollars flowing out from the public sector. And that was changed. And it had an immediate impact, much like transportation or other types of services that we might have thought of in the past as fundamental for people to have employment. It was that connectivity and access to resources. And now that isn't just a one-off. The organization is saying, how can that be for the future? And I know that's micro, but it's game changing, right? In terms of how we think about where resources are and where they need to be today. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to be really building on that.
Well, and the purchase of laptops and technology, Tommy, I think the early childhood education system shifted significantly during the pandemic. What did you see, and how did you see Head Start community action agencies pivot in that moment, and what will continue forward into the future in terms of early childhood?
You know, and I love this question because it really made my mind spin for a while while thinking about it, because I think that there are so many examples, right? I mean, I was actually thinking before you even said that, Tracy, about the example of a Head Start program in a rural area in Oregon as well, equipping a bus with Wi-Fi devices, right? And telling all the parents, here's where the bus is going to be located, so you can come to this parking lot and be able to download lesson plans and do this and do that and everything like that. There's all sorts of stories, right, that we hear that are really powerful about Head Start being there, just literally teachers driving by and waving at kids in the windows, right, to remind them that they're still there, they still love them, they still want to see them, those types of things. But then another part of me is thinking, that's nothing new for Head Start. That really isn't a major change. That is us doing what we've been trained to do. That is us living up to basically what the promise of Head Start is, of bringing communities together, and which is right there with community action as well, right? Coming together for community-based solutions. And I think that there's a broader societal shift that we're seeing. And again, I haven't said it yet, but I said it a ton of times in my mind. I'm originally from Minnesota, and I think Gary can relate to this, and Denise, you can too, because you're from colder climates too. That you have to be perpetually an optimist if you're from Minnesota if you're going to survive, because when it's snowing 1.5 feet in May and it's 20 degrees out, you got to think, okay, summer's eventually going to come. Summer's eventually going to come. So I am a perpetual optimist, and so I do think that something that happened during the pandemic was a very humanizing experience for all sectors of our society, right? Of a recognition that we need each other, of a recognition that we need community. And that community may manifest itself in very different ways, right? I mean, we've seen some communities go out and say, okay, well, COVID is a hoax. And other communities go out and say the opposite, right? And recognize the pain that has happened and that has come forward in there. But the common denominator that I was really thinking on this with this question is that I think that this concept of humanizing, of having a little bit more space to be a human, to recognize that things are tough when they're tough. That to me is the biggest shift and change that I think we've seen as a society. And I think that's the opportunity that I see for us to be able to take advantage of, right? I mean, I look back at the changes that we've seen in terms of additional flexibilities in Head Start, on the broader level of the abilities within systems to interact. I think there's some great examples up here. Non-congregate feeding options in the CACFP Child and Adult Care Food Program is another good example of that. But I don't really see those as major changes. I see those as us doing what we're supposed to do. That is what we're charged to do, and that is what we did. We showed up and we did that. And I think that there's more people realizing, hey, we need each other in different ways. And so to me, that is really the challenge that we face, is how do we ensure that evolution, that continued growth, that continued change to humanize each other, right? To break beyond the us versus them. And you may sit here and say, Tommy, you're looking at an alternate reality, and maybe I am. But I again, because of that optimistic nature, I fundamentally think that is the opportunity for us. Last thing I want to say is, just to be totally transparent and blunt, things are not great right now in Head Start. Things are not great right now in human services programs. Things are really, really difficult. However, that's the time when our communities need us most. That is the time that we are trained for. That is the time that we're supposed to be there. And I think we did that through the pandemic. I think we're seeing a different angle of it with maybe the communities not being as stressed, but maybe us being as stressed in this situation. And that's why I think conversations like this are so critical. And that to me is that humanizing angle is really what I hope we can continue to move forward with.
Thank you, Tommy. Josh, I loved what you talked about in terms of it's a human right to age well. And we're touching a bit on technology. I know NCOA has the benefit checkup tool, but it's also this shifting of how do we reach a growing aging population who have experience with technology, but you are shifting and leaning heavily into that space. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So there's this misnomer out there that older adults don't know how to use technology. It is, in my mind, one of the greatest representations of ageism out there. The reality is many older adults are very tech savvy. They have complete understanding of how to use technology. The bigger issue is, do they have the right access to it? And there's an entire access conversation. So the tool that Denise was referring to, benefitscheckup.org, is an online tool to help older adults and their caregivers find benefit programs that they qualify for. The SNAP, the LIHEAP, the Medicare programs, MSP, LAS. I'm using the acronyms, assuming most people in the room know them, but if not, I'm happy to get into that. I typically spell them all out, but I think we're in good shape here. But ultimately, that tool is really designed for both older adults and caregivers themselves, because so many people come down to it. But during the pandemic, what I think is amazing across the space is how quickly the aging networks, all of the community action networks, pivoted quickly. It was a resilience conversation. You know, we went to, instead of congregate meal settings, we went to home delivered meals really quickly. I mean, many of you know that about 1 million older adults go to senior centers every day. That's often where they get their congregate meals. Having to shift that virtually was a quick and amazing pivot that the teams did. And many of the programs being offered there were then moved digitally, but that caused problems. And while we had a lot of private sector companies step up from a technology perspective to help distribute devices or help provide them at a lower cost, we still have the issue of how do we help people get online. And that is something that I know we're dealing with together as multiple parts of the human services model. And not only get online, but also understand how to use that technology and how to best access those things. So I think it's an ongoing challenge, but we have to continue helping people where they are. And that means providing both community and digital supports. And the digital supports like Benefits Checkup and like many of the other programs that y'all use are vitally important to the success of getting the message out there and really growing the impact. Because while we can talk in broad swaths of numbers, 70 million older adults out there, that's 70 million people, 70 million stories, 70 million families who are trying to address needs for somebody specific. And that's why we put both national tools out there as well as invest in the community as much as possible, because that one-to-one connection, whether via a person or via the computer, is vitally important to getting the individual the services and supports they need.
Thank you. I'm going to shift gears to both the elephant in the room that we don't talk, oh wait, no, we do talk about this elephant that's in the room, labor force, HR issues. In the human services sector, as in many sectors, we're experiencing significant staff shortages, whether it's Head Start classrooms that can't open, whether it's reduced hours for emergency application for services. Tommy, I'll start with you, and then Tracy, I'd like to hear your perspective on labor shortage issues in the human services sector. And I know Allison, CAP has done a lot of work in terms of how do CAP agencies respond in ways that are reflective within the CSBG Act and other legal ways to benefit. But Tommy, maybe we could start with you.
Yeah, I mean, this is the challenge of our generation, right? Our collective generation. Understanding we're in multiple generations that are here, but I think this is the trick. This is what we have to figure out. If I had a silver bullet or had the answer, I think we already would be doing it by now. So I wish I had that. So don't hold your breath if that's what you're waiting for here. But I think that I think that this is the crux of our issue for the next 5 years, is figuring this piece out, maybe longer, hopefully less, but is figuring out how can we get the right people into the right positions and keep them, right, in those spaces. I think that there's so many different layers to this conversation that make this even more complicated and that make this even more difficult to navigate. And I think the frustrating thing from a Head Start perspective is that I thought we were very, very close to having some major support coming down the road. I want to be very transparent. I said this yesterday at our town hall that, you know, the issue is not solely dollars, right? It is not only a matter of staff salary and benefits and things of that kind. However, there's no way we get through this crisis without shifting the way we are doing salary, the way we are doing that. In other words, there's no way we get through this without additional dollars, right? Or major cuts to the services that we provide. I think that what we're experiencing is really a broader societal trend that I don't know the answer to. I think many people don't. I mean, you walk down the street and you see, buildings and restaurants and everything else like that advertising these high amounts of dollars for salaries and things like that, and they're struggling. They can't even fill the positions that they're looking at. And then you add to that, positions such as Head Start staff, right? Whether that is a teacher, whether that is a maintenance worker, whether that is a bus driver, a chef, a administrative official. Whatever, and it's tough, kind of across the board in all the things that we're looking at. So I think that the thing that we have to figure out is really it's going to have to be a localized solution. It's going to have to be individual communities figuring out what is the right way that we can navigate this broader workforce issue, and how can we work with kind of some of the broader partners in the community to address kind of the underlying social issues that are broadly. I also think we have to be very clear and transparent about the other major elephant in the room that's in this conversation, the elephant within. I'm getting like Inception elephant-y about this, but which is the fact that who makes up our workforce, namely in Head Start and early Head Start. It's women, and it's women of color. Right? And there are broader systemic issues that are underlining this entire conversation that are kind of being discussed, but not really being addressed. And so I think that the way that we find a way to break through this has to be lifting that piece up. It has to be doing it in partnership with others, and it also has to include growing our own. It has to make sure that we bring parents and folks who have those special skills of interacting with children together, of making sure that children see people who look like them, right? Who come from the same background as them or their families, whether that be new Americans, whether that be folks who've been in here for a while, whatever. And I think that kind of all of those pieces together is the way forward. It is not going to be an easy road forward, but we have to figure out how to navigate this, because if we don't, I do honestly fear that the consequences could be existential.
I ditto everything you just said, and I had written a couple of notes as we were coming in to the conversation today, and similarly wrote, if you asked me what's the single most pressing issue among all of us, our workforce. We can't do the work without people. And the answers are not easy, they're complex, and they're being faced by all sorts of industries, including our own. And so I think it is localized communities that are going to be critical to the conversation. And I do think there are some policy pieces that are really important. And they are about investment, but they're also about thinking about things differently. So, for example, we can talk on the technology side, and we saw it after the Affordable Care Act, where there were increased matches by the federal government, 90-10 investments on the healthcare side, where you could actually use those dollars to help human services. But it was largely on the public sector. It ignored the fact that our service delivery actually happens in community-based organizations on the ground. So there's a through line there that you could employ to workforce as well. Like really thinking about how could we incentivize supports for community organizations and health and human service organizations in ways that would build capacity, increase the opportunity for folks on the ground to contribute, because they're closest to what people experience every day with our structures and systems. They sit with a lot of the solutions. They were able to do it during the pandemic. And as we shift out of it, it's so easy to go back in terms of like, wait a minute, folks who are on the front line really know what we need to do in terms of changing our systems and structures. We need additional support to make sure we're compensating them fully for that, and that we're able to really build all the capacity needs, including technology capacity, right, to support the work they're doing. So, I think that is a longer term solution, and one that I think there's an opportunity for national organizations to partner on together to talk with the administration and with Congress about ways that we could actually address the issues. But for me, I'm always looking to across the country for folks who are really doing innovative work in this space, and even the folks that are doing the most innovative work are struggling. So it really is an imperative. I completely agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said so far, and so I don't want to repeat, but it's absolutely true. Like, we are in the pandemic, I think, really forced this issue forward. This is not a new issue. I mean, it's hard to have, I think, staff that could use your services. You know, that's not a place where we want to be. That's not promoting the kind of movement forward that we want to promote. So, and I think that's been a struggle. That's not a new challenge, but I think the pandemic has forced us to kind of grapple with that challenge in a different way. And I do think everyone's motivations have also shifted. Human motivations have shifted, and the pandemic gave time for reflection, whether it was forced time because people were laid off, or whether it was chosen time because they wanted it. And so I think all of that has to be part of the calculus. I think there has to be flexibility in the rules that govern the funding that we receive. And so we've I know everyone's like, yeah, well, let's have it. And I think that's how Cap Law's thinking about the rules. When you contact us, you know, it's hard as a lawyer because we don't want to put anybody out there for a slap on the wrist or larger, because sometimes those slaps really hurt and they're really hard. And so we're trying to avoid that. But there was a lot of flexibility that came out there with the uniform guidance. And I think, kudos, hats off to the Office of Head Start for really embracing all of those administrative flexibilities. One of them in particular was basically sort of use the money in the way that you think will best address this emergency situation that we've never seen in our lifetimes and is new, and then just document that and show us why that was reasonable. And it would be awesome to get that data and see how did people actually use those dollars in a way that was different, and how did they move the needle forward. And I bet supporting our staff is going to be one of those uses, I hope, in some way. Because we need it, or supporting the benefits. There is some flexibility there in the rules that govern us, and as I was about to say, Cap Law is constantly sort of looking for ways to support the taking advantage of those flexibilities within the rules. I think incentive compensation is an example. I can't believe I'm on a national stage talking about incentive compensation, because as Jeannie knows, there are departmental appeals board decisions from Health and Human Services about incentive compensation that aren't particularly favorable. There's some that are favorable, and it was always this sort of, well, we'll discuss it with you if you call, but we're not going to necessarily advertise it. I mean, it's a tool in the toolbox. Yeah. You know, I mean, at this point, we have to start looking at all the tools we have available to us. And so Cap Law did put out a wage compensation explainer to try to at least lay out a baseline for what's available. I hope we're going to expand that and add to that to help. I think you've also got to look at the fringe benefits side of things, and there is a lot of flexibility there. You just have to have policies and document. So I know Denise wants me to shut up talking rules, so I'll be quiet now. That's not this. Yes, I can see that side eye. That little. You guys can you see that side eye? I see the side eye. I don't know if it's on that Jumbotron, but I'm going to hand it back over.
Thank you, Allison.
Denise, could I know we're trying to move along, and I'll try to be quick, but there are just a couple things I want to add to this that sort of maybe have come up, but not specifically. So I think local, yes. We have to get at policy, yes. It's got to be a both and. We've got to sort of recognize that some of what's going on is unjust. Some of the wages that this country expects folks in the human service to accept is not right. we, you know, several speakers yesterday called us to like stand up and speak out, and I think this is a place. At the same time, I think we can be innovative and creative, and in local places, it's going to look different. At NASCAS, I think we're very tuned into the issues around weatherization, obviously, because those are our members. And states know that, you know, we will not be successful with the new weatherization funding if we don't address workforce issues. So just as hot a topic almost as Head Start, quite frankly. We've got to look at the policies and the rules and the regs that are hampering our ability to engage new contractors and people at fair wages. And so that is on the horizon for us, for sure, for all of us at all levels, I think. And the other thing I would just say, maybe sort of adding and kind of bringing in some of your work, Josh, you know, people are searching for meaning at all age levels. And we have a lot of seniors who maybe have retired or who want to switch careers. And the work that we all do is very meaningful. And how we sort of tap in and lift up that, you know, if you're looking for additional meaning in your career, in your second career or third career, we really have it in community action. And how do we lift that up and go and find people who really share, you know, a desire to maybe give back? And I think it sort of comes to that reflection and that human issue that, you know, we all are maybe looking for something a little different now than we were before the pandemic. So just wanted to add that.
Josh, any responses to that before I turn to Gary?
I mean, I think you're spot on. I think, you know, the reality is there are a lot of folks who are looking for that meaning, that purpose, that desire. Oftentimes, this concept of I'm going to retire on my own terms isn't reality. You know, it's not just the 65 and the watch anymore. It's the 59 and having to drop out of the workforce for caregiving responsibilities. It's the 66, but my job is being ended, or it's because my boss doesn't believe I can do it because I'm older. And there was some really interesting press about a reporter who was just recently let go because she had gray hair. And, you know, I think those type of ageism things just are the root of some of the most problematic parts of our society when it comes to these things. And so I do encourage that we talk about, we broaden the scope as to who we should be looking for these kind of jobs. We talk about the value of these jobs. You will find individuals who are really interested in that. And I think there is a huge opportunity to re-engage people at all sorts of generations as to helping individuals move forward. I think there's a ton of opportunity there, yes.
Gary, I want to turn to you to do the pull thread. Pull the thread through. Your life's work has really brought you to this place where you are running an organization focused on wealth inequity. This thread is the undergirding of structural racism, gender inequities in our economic systems. And our next panel has experts in the economies. We're going to be talking macro level systems. Your work has mattered to so many for so long. Can you talk a little bit about your perspective and what you've heard on this panel about the labor issue and how it's undergirded?
Well, one of the thoughts that came to my mind as people were talking is we're never going back. We won't go back to what was. We may long for something that happened or want to go back, but I actually think we're moving towards, from this work, from what's happened with the pandemic, what's happened with the workforce, we're moving towards a 4-day work week. We're moving towards more flexibility. In fact, it was just a survey, Forbes just did a survey on what matters to people. And it actually shifted from when the pandemic started to what it is now in terms of what they're valuing flexibility in their work. They're valuing being seen and heard in the workplace. We just did a survey, a national survey of entrepreneurs of color, and it was on good jobs. And I was pleasantly pleased with the results because about 80–90% of people that are working in firms that are led by people of color are satisfied with their work. Now think about that for a minute. Many of these folks that are entrepreneurs of color are below $1 million in revenue. They're very small, fragile firms. But what people got most, what they wanted most, was the flexibility and trust of their employer. They actually rated their employer. Now, there's a similar survey that Harvard just completed. We were working with them on larger employers and found that, only 50 to 60% of the people were pleased with their employer. And we were, just blown away that this question of being independent and actually having a voice and having flexibility, et cetera, matters in this context. With regards to the question of race and ethnicity that you raised, from my perspective, and we've done all kind of research, et cetera, but I think most of you know these facts. One, when the unemployment rate is 3%, 2% for the general population, it's twice that for people of color. Do you all know that? Am I telling you anything? Okay. And on wages, same thing. So we've got these huge inequities that have existed for the same work. Women get paid consistently less than men for the same work. That's not right. Right? And so what we're seeing is a revolution within the context of the American workforce that hasn't been seen in our lifetimes. And so if you're looking to go back to what was, if you're looking to everybody being back in the office and doing what you were, that is just not going to happen. Then we have the other issue of the millennials and the X and the Y and the Zs. You guys know what I'm talking about? Right? And so their value in how they think about work is totally different than how I was raised to think about work and how many of us in the room were with. But what we do as older people in the workforce, I'll put myself in that crowd, what we do is we say, oh, well, they don't know what they're talking about. They ain't never been in the workforce before. Instead of really listening and understanding what those young people are saying to you, because actually they want to make a difference. They want to make a contribution. They want to do X, Y, and Z. And if you turn your mind to, oh, well, they just don't know what they're talking about. They want a flat organization. What are they? All of a sudden they've been here 2 years and they want to tell the CEO what to do, right? I mean, that's our response, right? And that response isn't going to get you where you need to go. So those in the room that actually, how many of you have to work with other people? Raise your hand. If you have to work with other people and you're not taking their context into consideration or their circumstances into consideration, used to be where, when I was, growing up, you'd have one low, this is how we do it, this is it, right? But you're really going to have to think creatively and flexibly, and you need to bring those folks close in that have the issues so that you can understand them and actually work with them on them instead of pushing them away. So we actually have the opportunity to do something really different. Let's do that.
Now I'm getting the evil eye from off stage, Allison, just letting you know. So
that is an evil eye to it.
So we're going to have to wrap up here, but I do want to give everyone a shot to kind of really quick kind of popcorn. What would be a key takeaway you'd like this room to be able to, because they're going to remember pieces of today, right? Next Wednesday, when they wake up and they think about this panel, what do you want them to remember? Josh, maybe we could start with you.
I think the answer to that is know that if you aren't already working with the aging organizations in your community that they're out there, just like you, there's across the country. Reach out to them. Their mission is to serve older adults across the span, both in health and economic security, as well as the senior centers, congregate settings that individuals work to meet, and those are great places to actually connect with, especially lower income older adults. So I highly encourage those connections. Thank you for your time.
Going down this way. I think the one thing I'll just say in terms of takeaways is that we were made for this moment. We are I always think about the Dr. King quote, "The long arc of history bends towards justice," right? And it some days feels like we're closer to that, and other days it feels like we're a lot further away from that. But at the same time, that is what we do. We're going to continue to do that. We have done that from the beginning. The challenges will look different. The solutions will look different. But children and families and communities are better off because of the work that we do, and we got to keep doing it.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think your positioning to community, your proximity to people is key. And the way you lift up people, the way you lift up families, communities, that focuses on their resiliency and their strength is really what we want to see moving forward. And we, public sector leaders, really need to lean in to community organizations and support you. And so I think finding ways for us to continue to partner together is really important. And I'll just say, you know, I think it's very easy to define people by the stresses they experience. And I walked in on the panel earlier too and heard you know, someone say, you can so easily not understand your worth because of what you've experienced for so long. And all of you are the voice and the connection to helping people make sure that is not what defines them, and that the strength and resiliency within them is what shines through. And it's just really, I think, important for all of you to recognize the impact that you have every day.
So I would speak directly to state CSBG weatherization offices and community action agencies and say this is a legacy moment for us. We do not have the luxury of not just being in deep, deep relationship and working together. There are so many opportunities and challenges we've just talked about and scratched the surface in the last few minutes, and we've got to be in deep relationship and working together to solve these. So set aside any agendas, old agendas. Those are luxuries. We don't have time for them, and work together. And here's my shameless plug. You can come to the NASCAS conference together with your state at the end of October. Our conference is not just for states. Community action agencies can get a lot out of our conference too, and at this weatherization and CSBG moment, I would encourage you to take a look at the agenda and join us in Minneapolis at the end of October.
I'm going to say something that makes me anxious, but I think it's something we need to own, and I think it is that we've got to become comfortable with a level of risk that is going to have to be taken in order to move some of these needles forward. And I think as leaders, and that's at all levels. I think that's at the federal level. I think that's at the state level. I think that's at the local level. I think we have to be able to work together, and as leaders, we have to be able to make those tough decisions and weigh the pros and cons of those decisions, but we may lean on a side that seems a little more uncomfortable than normal, but I'm just learning from my own panelists here. That is, you know, how we're going to disrupt and move the system forward. So I'm building off of Tracy's original theme for our session today. But I think we have to kind of get there together, and we can do it as a group. We can do it together, but we got to move in that direction.
So I'll just say, okay, I'm going to stand up again. Hey! So I'll say, can you say baby bonds? Say baby bonds. Baby bonds. Say baby bonds. Now, why am I saying that? Now, you're going to hear from one of the creator of baby bonds in a minute, Dr. Derek Hamilton. But if we're going to transform this country, if we're going to change the economic trajectory of low and moderate income people and people of color in this country, we're going to have to do something big. It can't be just us doing what we've been doing. We can use this inflection point to do something really different. And baby bonds is a means to an end to get us to have a country that works equally well for everyone. Can you say equally well? Equally well. For everyone, no matter who you are, no matter where you grew up, no matter what your location is in this country, we can do this together. Can we do it? Can we do it? Thank you so much.
Let's give this panel a little bit of community action love. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your partnership, your engagement, your passion. We so appreciate all of you. There's no break if you're gonna stay. You may stand up halfway and do, But we're going to bring out our panel right away. You've already gotten a preview. It's going to kick butt and take names. So please stay where you are, and we're going to bring out the next panel. Thank you, everybody.